Alrighty, welcome back, everyone. We just talked about Ohio State and how I don't necessarily think this season is national championship or bust, but there are a lot of things that they have to do this upcoming season in Columbus, and it is as much pressure as I've seen on a team in really ever, if I'm being totally honest. But let's jump into segment three here, and let's get back into my guys for 2024. This is part three of this segment, and if you haven't seen this segment before, it's essentially just a lot of guys that I have high hopes for this season, and not, Luther Burden, and not, Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers, because they're going to have good seasons. I'm going a little bit deeper down the well for some guys that maybe you don't know about, maybe you do know about, and just need a little bit more love. And also, on top of that, you can come back at the end of the season and make fun of me if I got these guys wrong. But at the end of the day, let's jump in here and break down some of the guys that I'm watching, and I want to start with Byrum Brown. He's the quarterback over at USF, and this kid is just really special. He's one of those guys that you're just going to want to watch at some point this season. I understand USF might not be on the top of your list of teams to watch, even though it's a really, really fun product down there, but this is a guy that's just incredible. He makes so many fun plays on the football field and is one of those guys that if you are a college football junkie, you likely know the name already, but definitely tune into a couple of these games and just watch this kid go to work because he owns 12 school records at USF. He set 11 of them last year, including season passing yards, touchdowns, completion percentage, and a ton of other things. He was one of only two players in the country to pass for 3,000 yards and 800 yards rushing a year ago. The other one was the Heisman winner in Jaden Daniels. So that's how good this kid is. He is a different type of dual threat quarterback that is outright scary for any defense that he faced. I think a lot of people love USF going into this year. They're one of those very popular group of five teams, and a lot of the reason is Alex Golish. He's done an incredible job as the head coach over there and is someone that I fully expect to be a Power 5 head coach by the end of let's say by the end of December, just for fun. Let's add a little intrigue to that. But Byrum Brown is the number two reason that this dude is absolutely special and is one of the best players in the Group of Five level, and definitely could lead the Bulls to a college football playoffs this upcoming season, and that would be a really incredible thing to watch. So very, very excited about that. I definitely think he's someone that is gonna surprise some people this upcoming year and could just do it in the playoff if he's lucky. But we'll move right along here. Jamal Haynes is someone that I just absolutely love for like a million different reasons. But the number one reason is he's 5'9", 180. He is not necessarily a huge kid. You would think he's about 3 inches taller and 40 pounds heavier by the way that he runs. He is a mean runner, and that's the best way to describe it. He hits every single hole with some anger, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he was smiling behind the face mask because this is a kid that just really loves contact. He really just wants to be out on the football field, play hard-nosed, get a little bloody, get a little bit dirty, and I'm sure Brent Key loves that. I have to imagine that this is one of Brent Key's favorite players because that's exactly how Brent Key is. So a very, very good player, totaled over 1,000 yards rushing a year ago, 7 touchdowns, 6.1 yards per carry. A very, very good rushing attack for Georgia Tech this upcoming year. So I expect it to be even bigger year for this kid. He's so much fun to watch, and I think he's this team's heartbeat. I think whenever they need a little bit of a boost, whenever they need that little bit of motivation late on in the third or fourth quarter, this is the guy you're going to look to give that speech, and he's going to give a really good one. So I'm very excited for this kid. I think he could definitely take the ACC by storm, and maybe he just leads Georgia Tech to a very, very good season down there in Atlanta. But we'll break down the next guy here. Chris Lewis is an absolute dude. There are so many guys across the country that are really, really good at getting those 50-50 balls and playing up in the air. This is one of those that might be more special than anyone, if I'm being totally honest. He turns a 50-50 ball into an 80-20 ball in a second. He is really, really incredible in the air, and if the ball is anywhere near Chris Lewis, it's his. I can almost promise you that. So watching him a year ago was an absolute spectacle, and I expect much more from him this year. He started his career at Kentucky and then transferred over to Troy after 2 years where just not a lot happened at Kentucky. He caught 32 passes, 735 yards, and 10 scores a year ago. Did a really, really good job, and was a little bit surprised he didn't go over to Tulane when John Summerall did, but obviously he's found a home in Troy, is very, very happy, and he's doing really well, so I don't necessarily blame him for that by any means. I do think this is a guy that when you turn on the Sun Belt in the middle of a Saturday and you see an interesting game and you're watching Troy, just find number 6 on the field. Do yourself a favor and just watch that guy go to work, because a lot of balls are going to go in his direction, and when they do, they're caught 90% of the time. It's pretty incredible to watch this guy play, and he's one of those guys that I'm almost picturing right now being someone that just shoots up NFL draft boards because of the physicality, because of the ability to go up and get some passes, and definitely a team up in the NFL could fall in love with this kid. I'll just leave it at that. But the next guy I want to talk about, Nash Hutmacher, is a very, very good player. This guy is absolutely insane. And you look across all of college football, there are so many great defensive tackles. It starts with Mason Graham, Deone Walker, Dante Corleone, who unfortunately we likely won't see for some of the season with some blood clots that he's dealing with. Hope he gets healthy as quickly as possible. But there are so many people elite at that position, particularly in the Big Ten, that we kind of forget about this kid, but he is an absolute force. He is absolutely insane. He started all 12 games as a junior a year ago and had 40 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks from the defensive tackle position is pretty special. He played nose tackle for a good portion of the season, and that's huge for this team. One of the reasons that they were so incredible a year ago was no one was pushing them off the ball, at least for the majority of the games. There were a couple of games that did not look too pretty by any means, but that defensive line was really, really solid, and this guy was a huge reason for that, probably the biggest reason for that. So he is the anchor of that team and definitely as disruptive as really anyone in the country, especially from that nose tackle position. Nebraska's defense is going to be incredible for just about a million reasons. They have so many dudes across the defense that are going to make incredible plays, but I do think this guy is just different. I think he could be the biggest difference maker because a team like Ohio State, a team like Michigan, Penn State, they're going to want to run the ball, and they're going to want to do it a lot because that's the way that they're going to open up their passing game. If you can't run, then it's going to be a pretty long day at the office, and this would be a guy that would totally wreck that idea. So it'll be really fascinating to watch him. I think he's one of those players that can be an all Big Ten level player and just shoot up draft boards because the just nature of this kid is really, really remarkable. He's right in the middle of the defense, but he makes plenty of waves. There's no two ways about that. But then we'll move on here. David Benda is someone around Texas that I think just gets a little bit overlooked in all of the craziness around that. Obviously, you're going to talk about the offense and Steve Sarkisian and what he's going to do this upcoming year with Quinn Ewers. And then when you talk about the defense, you're going to talk about some of the worries on that side with defensive tackle not being quite as strong as it was a year ago and the secondary trying to make its way along and be a little bit stronger this year. But the linebackers in the middle of the field are pretty solid, and that's probably the reason that they're not getting talked about too much. But David Benda made 8 starts a year ago, made a number of big-time plays, including a big-time sack against Bama late in that game, and he's one of those guys that just can make every play on the field. He can do so many different things, is uber athletic, makes a ton of really, really remarkable plays, and has only gotten better over the last couple of years. That's been probably the player on Texas that I've noticed the biggest leaps over the last couple of years as Steve Sarkisian and his staff has kind of sunk their teeth into this program. This kid is just miles better than he used to be, and it's really, really incredible to watch, and I definitely think he's going to be huge this year. I think he's the emotional leader of that defense. I would expect him to be the green dot guy. I could see Anthony Hill, his running mate, being that guy as well, but I think they'll probably lean in the veteran direction and go with Benda here. But along with Jahdae Barron, he is the emotional leader of this team. I think him and Anthony Hill is one of the more underrated linebacking duos in the entire country, and I think David Benda might play himself into a pretty nice draft position this year because he can do just so many things. Is really good at rushing the passer, can get out and cover running backs when he needs to, and is just a really, really savvy player. Is getting much, much smarter, and I expect just a huge 2024 from him. And then finally, a personal favorite of mine is Devin Grant. He is a DB down at South Carolina, it's kind of unknown if he's going to play safety or corner, but he played safety at Buffalo. I got to see this guy a ton at Buffalo last year because I was working for a company that did some NFL and college scouting and got to watch this team every single week of the season. So got to see a lot of Buffalo football last year. Another reason that I think Maurice Lindquist, the new head coach or the new DB coach down at Bama, is going to do a fantastic job. He was the head coach at Buffalo, and Devin Grant had a year last year. He was an all-MAC selection a year ago, 5 INTs, led the conference, was, I believe, 6th in the country, if I'm not mistaken, 79 tackles, and had pretty much a ridiculous highlight every single game last year. He was just absolutely remarkable, was all over the field, and more than anything else, he found his way over to Syracuse to Fran Brown, which is the biggest boost he could possibly get. That is one of the best developers of DB talent in the country, and definitely one of the guys that can take him to that next level. Because when you look at Devin Grant play, there are a lot of things to love, but then there are a couple of plays where he just doesn't let it fully develop. He'll fly downhill and maybe just miss an angle or take a bad angle and miss a tackle, and it makes him look just a little bit goofy at times. Let's just put it that way. But I do think Fran Brown is one of those guys that can fix that right up. He's fantastic at just making sure guys are where they need to be. They set their feet and drive into a tackle. So definitely think that he's going to take a big step forward this year. A ton of really good players in that secondary for Syracuse, but this guy is one that I'm definitely watching very closely. Very excited for him. So a ton of guys that are really, really interesting going into this season, but I think those 6 could be really, really fun to watch. Actually, I did want to show you all of the guys that I have right now. So as you can see, have a ton of different guys from all over the place. Tried to dip a little bit into the group of 5 standings this time around, but definitely a ton of guys to watch for this upcoming season. But let's take our third break here, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the most impactful freshmen for all of the conference contenders in the Big Ten. We did the SEC last time, so we'll jump into the Big Ten today, and there are a ton of guys to break down because there are 2 guys in particular in this conference that are just going to be huge in their freshman year. But we'll break that down right after this, so stick with us.